19-year-old Divya Deshmukh shocked everyone by conquering the Women's World Cup, defeating titans like Harika Dronavalli, Zhongyi, and Koneru Humpy along the way. With this incredible performance, she officially becomes India's latest Grandmaster. From rising star to world champion, this is the story of Divya's unstoppable run. In the World Cup final in Batumi, Georgia, a legend sat across the board, Grandmaster Koneru Humpy, one of India's finest. But facing her was a fearless rising star, Divya Deshmukh, just 19, eyes burning with ambition. And what happened next shook the chess world. Both the classical games and the first rapid tiebreak ended in draws. So it all came down to the second rapid tiebreak game. Humpy opened with pawn to d4. Divya answered symmetrically, pawn to d5. Then came pawn to c4, aiming for space, and pawn to e6, a rock-solid setup from black. The knights leaped out. Humpy played knight to f3, and Divya mirrored with knight to f6. Then Humpy fianchettoed her bishop with pawn to g3, but Divya struck first. Pawn takes pawn on c4, bold and early. Humpy developed her bishop to the long diagonal, but Divya countered with bishop to b4, checking. Humpy blocked with bishop to d2, and Divya reinforced with pawn to a5. Humpy lined up her queen on c2, and Divya exchanged bishops, then continued her queenside expansion with pawn to b5. The queenside tension exploded. Humpy pushed pawn to a4, and black responded with pawn to c6. Humpy challenged with pawn to b3, but Divya captured again. Pawn takes pawn on b3. Humpy recaptured with her knight, and both sides castled into safety. Then, the shift. Divya launched bishop to a6, applying pressure. Humpy advanced her knight to c5. But Divya wasn't afraid. She captured a pawn with pawn takes pawn on a4. When Humpy recaptured with her knight, Divya simply brought in the rook to a6. The tension kept rising. Humpy brought her rook up to a4. Divya developed another knight to d7. Then Humpy doubled rooks. Divya placed her queen on b6, aiming at the center and queenside. Humpy's knight retreated to d2. Divya doubled her rooks with rook to a8. Humpy tried to stabilize with pawn to e3, but Divya's knight stormed forward to d5. And now the pressure was on. Humpy jumped her knight to c4. Divya calmly slid her queen to c7. Humpy moved her queen to d2. Divya repositioned her knight to b6, eyeing outposts. Then, a critical moment. Humpy captured the knight. Divya recaptured with her queen. Then Humpy placed her queen on c3, and Divya's knight jumped back into action, knight to f6. The rooks came to life. The center exploded with trades. Humpy exchanged bishop for knight. Divya retook with a pawn. Humpy shifted her rooks again. Divya made a quiet telling move, pawn to h6. A breath before the storm. Humpy played king to g2. Divya struck back with queen to b5. Humpy pushed pawn to h3, and Divya repeated queen to b6. Humpy realigned her rook to a2, and Divya kept up the tension with queen to c7. Then Humpy placed her queen on c5, but Divya answered with queen to a7. Another shuffle, and Divya brought her queen back to b6, tightening the noose. Then came the positioning. Rooks danced, queens eyed each other. And then, the breakthrough. Humpy pushed pawn to e4, trying to open the center. Divya immediately answered, pawn takes pawn. Humpy fired back with pawn to d5. And Divya calmly responded with queen to e5. Humpy reinforced with rook to d1, but Divya broke through. Pawn takes pawn on d5. Humpy took with the rook. Divya responded with queen to e8. Then Humpy's queen jumped to d4, checking. Divya calmly moved her king to safety. And then came the endgame. Rooks were exchanged, queens too. And Divya brought her rook to f6, anchoring control. Humpy kept fighting, but Divya's pawns began to roll. She activated the a-pawn. Humpy tried to block with rooks and king, but Divya pushed the pawn all the way to a2. And then, she brought her rook to a3. Humpy desperately tried to stop the avalanche, but it was too late. Divya's pawns advanced, her king stood solid, her rook dominated the board. Humpy played pawn to g4, hoping for counterplay. But Divya responded with a flurry. Check, pressure, coordination, her king infiltrated. Her rook swung. And finally, after a precise dance of checks, defenses, and advances, Humpy resigned. Divya Deshmukh had done it. She had outplayed a legend, not with luck, but with surgical precision, deep calculation, and nerves of steel. What a phenomenal journey by Divya Deshmukh, outplaying legends, breaking barriers, and clinching both the World Cup and the Grandmaster title in one sweep. If you're a true chess fan, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more epic moments from the world of chess. Tell us, which of Divya's victories amazed you the most?